Welcome to a new fantasy adventure on Dreamscape. In this exciting story, the young ranger Elowyn embarks on a dangerous venture. Her mission takes her deep into dark forests and into the sinister fortress of the dreaded robber Dolgash. Will she succeed in fulfilling her mission? The biggest gesture you can give me is a like. If you like my stories, feel free to leave a subscription and activate the bell so you don't miss any more stories. Well then, let's dive into the story. Elowyn's dangerous mission. Dusk fell over the forests of Elenara as the ranger Elowyn approached her destination. She skillfully crept between the gnarled tree trunks, always careful not to make any noise. No one was to discover her here, for Elowyn was on a secret mission. Deep in these woods was supposed to be the stronghold of Dolgash, the leader of a band of dreaded robbers and murderers who had been plaguing the surrounding villages lately. Elowyn had been tasked by the village elders to spy on the villain and find their hideout. This was the only way to break his gang. Suddenly there was a rustling in the bushes next to Elowyn. Quick as a flash, she drew her bow and aimed in the direction of the noise. But it was only a fox scampering away. The ranger breathed a sigh of relief and set off again. After a while, she reached a clearing with a ruined watchtower. According to her information, the criminal stronghold must be nearby. Quietly, Elowyn crept along the stone wall. Suddenly she heard voices and took cover. Two sinister figures were coming along the path, guards of Dolgash. Elowyn held her breath, but the two simply walked past her hiding place. At the far end of the clearing, Elowyn could now make out the gate of the secluded fortress nestled against a cliff. The perfect hideout for robbers. But how was Elowyn supposed to get in unnoticed? Then she spotted a shaft from which smoke was rising. A kitchen vent. The ranger climbed down the stone shaft. At the bottom, she found herself among pantries and fireplaces. No one was here, so Elowyn cautiously crept on. She arrived in a large hall where Dolgash was dining and feasting with his followers. Elowyn hid behind a curtain and listened. Indeed, the robbers were making new sinister plans against the surrounding villages. Elowyn had heard enough. She had to leave the fortress as soon as possible and report to the village elders. But suddenly the curtain fell aside.
"A spy!"
roared one of the robbers. Elowyn was grabbed and dragged in front of Dolgash.
"What do we have here?"
sneered the leader.
"The villagers are already sending children to spy on me?"
Elowyn remained steadfast.
"Your hustle is over, Dolgash.
She shouted.
The villagers will rise up and defeat you."
Dolgash just laughed.
"We'll see. Take her to the dungeon."
Gruffly, Elowyn was taken to the dungeons of the fortress and locked in a cramped cell. She had to get out of here and warn. That's when she spotted a loose stone in the wall. With difficulty she was able to loosen it. Behind it, a shaft appeared. This was the escape route. Elowyn squeezed in and crawled through the narrow passage that led steeply upwards. At the top, she pushed aside another loose stone and found herself outside the walls. The guards had not yet noticed her. Quickly, Elowyn scurried into the shadows of the forest. She ran as fast as she could through the night. She had to warn the villagers. Dolgash's fortress had been found, and now his doings could come to an end. Elowyn ran until her legs ached. Finally she arrived at one of the villages. Panting, she woke the village elders.
"Dolgash's fortress lies beyond the old watchtowers,"
she reported.
"He's planning new raids. We must stop him."
The village elders nodded gravely. That very night they sent messengers to the surrounding villages. At sunrise they would gather and move against Dolgash. Elowyn had fulfilled her mission. Now an end would finally be put to the raiders' hustle and bustle. The next morning, the peasants and villagers advanced united against the fortress of Dolgash. Elowyn led the procession, bow in hand. When they reached the clearing, Dolgash's people were already pouring out of the gate. They were far outnumbered by the villagers and were retreating. Elowyn fired arrow after arrow at the raiders and covered the advance of the peasants. Soon Dolgash's people retreated into the fortress. With axes, pitchforks, and torches, the villagers now entered the courtyard and overran the raiders. Elowyn charged ahead, bow discarded and sword drawn. She had to find Dolgash. In the great hall she found the leader, surrounded by his last loyal followers. With a loud battle cry, Elowyn threw herself into the fray. Her sword flashed as she attacked Dolgash. The latter was a good fighter and repelled her attack. Blades clanged as Elowyn and Dolgash slashed at each other. Finally, the ranger managed to break through the robber's guard. Her blade pierced deep into his chest. Dolgash slumped down, dying. His henchmen threw down their weapons and surrendered. Cheers went up among the villagers. The tyrant Dolgash was defeated. His fortress was razed and the surrounding villages were finally free from the fear of his raids. Elowyn was celebrated as a hero. But in the evening she was drawn back out into the forest, where new adventures would await her. Quietly and secretly she left the village, but that is another story.